The escape pod screamed through the docking bay doors like a dying star. Metal shrieked against metal as it crashed into the landing platform, sending sparks flying in every direction. Alarms blared throughout Galactic Station Meridian 7, and within seconds, security teams were rushing toward the smoking wreckage. Inside the pod, Princess Vila of the Empire struggled to breathe. Her skin, normally a brilliant shade of blue that glowed with soft light, now flickered like a broken lamp. Dark veins spread across her arms and face, pulsing with an ugly black color. The void rot had taken hold of her body, and she knew she was dying. The pod door hissed open. Security officers jumped back, their weapons raised. Through the smoke, they could see her collapsed against the pilot's seat, blood, silver blood, dripping from a wound on her shoulder. "Stay back," one officer shouted. "Scanners are showing void rot contamination." The words sent a wave of panic through the crowd that had gathered. Void rot was a death sentence. Worse than that, it could spread to almost every known species in the galaxy. Whole colonies had been wiped out by the disease in the past. Vila tried to speak, but her voice came out as a weak whisper. "Please, help me." Station commander arrived within minutes. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked at the princess, then at her security team, and her expression hardened. "Seal this section," she ordered. "No one in or out. Get a medical team here now." But when the medical team arrived, they refused to approach. The head doctor, a being with 6 arms and crystalline skin, shook his head firmly. "We cannot treat void rot. Our facility is not equipped for this level of contamination. If we bring her in, the entire medical bay will have to be destroyed." Clenched her jaw. "She's a princess of the Empire. We can't just leave her to die." "The Empire has already issued a statement," another officer said, reading from a data pad. "They've declared her quarantined and cut off all contact. They're not coming for her." Vila heard these words through the fog of pain. Her own people had abandoned her. She had discovered the truth about the bioweapon sales, had tried to expose the corrupt generals, and this was her reward. They had infected her, knowing that fear would do the rest. Above the docking bay, on a maintenance catwalk, a young man watched the scene unfold. His name was, and he worked as a mechanic on the cargo ships that came through the station. He was in his late 20s, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and oil stains on his work clothes. He had been fixing a cooling system when the crash happened. Watched as the Galactic Council's representatives arrived. They were a mix of different species, tall ones, short ones, ones with scales and ones with feathers. They gathered around the escape pod, talking in hushed voices. Ambassador, a reptilian being with green scales and cold yellow eyes, spoke the loudest. "We must think of the station's safety. Thousands of beings live here. We cannot risk infection for one individual." "What are you suggesting?" asked, though she already knew the answer. "We jettison the pod into space. It's the only way to be sure." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered officials. Felt his stomach turn. They were going to throw her out into the void of space. She would die alone, drifting among the stars. He thought about his grandmother back on Earth, who had raised him after his parents died. She used to tell him stories about the old ways, about honor and helping those in need. "A person's worth isn't measured by what they have," she would say, "but by what they're willing to give." Climbed down from the catwalk. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. He pushed through the crowd of onlookers until he reached the security barrier. "I'll take her," he said loudly. Everyone turned to look at him. Ambassador's eyes narrowed. "What did you say, human?" "I said I'll take her to my ship. I'll treat her there." Stepped forward. "Do you understand what you're saying? The void rot is deadly, I know, but humans have a different immune system than most species. We might be resistant to it." This wasn't entirely true. Had no idea if humans could resist void rot, but he knew that doing nothing was the same as murder. The council representatives looked at each other. A human volunteering to die seemed like an acceptable solution to them, one less problem to deal with. "This is highly irregular," said, but there was satisfaction in his voice. "But if a human wishes to doom himself, who are we to stop him?" Grab's arm. "Are you insane? You'll die." "Maybe," said quietly, "but I can't stand here and watch someone get thrown away like garbage. That's not who we are. That's not who I am." The commander stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You'll need to sign a waiver. The station takes no responsibility for what happens to you." "Fine." Within an hour, had signed all the documents. They gave him a contamination suit and a hover stretcher. He walked to the escape pod alone while everyone else kept their distance. When he looked down at Princess Vila, her eyes were half closed, but she was still conscious. "Why," she whispered, "why are you helping me?" Knelt beside her and carefully lifted her onto the stretcher. She was lighter than he expected. "Where I come from," he said, "we don't leave people to die alone, not if we can help it." "You're a fool," she murmured, but there were tears in her glowing eyes. "Yeah," agreed, "I've been called that before." He wheeled the stretcher through the docking bay. People moved away from him like he carried the plague, which, he supposed, he did now. He could feel their stares, their judgment, their relief that it was him and not them. His ship, was docked in the outer rim of the station. It was a small cargo vessel, nothing fancy, but it was home. The medical bay was just a small room with basic equipment, but it would have to be enough. As he secured Vila on the medical bed, she looked up at him. "I am Princess Vila of the Empire," she said weakly. "You should know who you're dying for." He replied, checking her vital signs on the monitor. "Just a mechanic, and we're not going to die, not today." He began treating her wounds, his hands steady despite his fear. Outside the ship, he could see station security setting up barriers around his docking port. They were quarantining him too now. Pulled out his communicator and sent an encrypted message to Earth, to his friend who worked in medical research. If anyone could help them figure out a cure, it was him. Princess Vila watched the human work, confusion and wonder mixing in her fevered mind. In her empire, humans were considered barely civilized, a young species that had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Yet this one had risked everything for her without hesitation. "You really are a fool," she whispered again, but this time it sounded almost like a compliment. Smiled without looking up from his work. "Maybe, but at least I'm a fool with a purpose." Outside, the station continued its normal operations. Ships came and went. Traders sold their goods. Diplomats made their deals. But in one small corner on one small ship, something important had just begun. One human had made a choice that would change the galaxy forever, though he didn't know it yet. All he knew was that someone needed help, and he had answered. 3 days passed on the 3 days of working without sleep, monitoring Princess Vila's condition, trying everything he could think of to slow the void rot spreading through her body. The disease was winning, and they both knew it. Vila drifted in and out of consciousness. In her waking moments, she watched the human with suspicious eyes. She had been raised to believe that humans were primitive, driven by greed and violence. Yet this one asked for nothing. He simply worked, changing her bandages, giving her water, checking her temperature. "Why?" she asked again on the 3rd day. Her voice was stronger now, though her skin still flickered with that sickly dark light. "What do you want from me?" Was cleaning his medical tools. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes and his hair was messy. "I don't want anything." "Everyone wants something. Ransom, political favor. Are you planning to sell me to my enemies?" He laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Princess, I'm a cargo ship mechanic who barely makes enough to keep this ship running. I'm not smart enough for political games." "Then you're a fool." She said it matter-of-factly, not as an insult. "So you keep saying." He sat down in the chair next to her bed. Look, I know you don't understand. In your empire, maybe people only help each other when there's profit in it. But on Earth, we have a saying, a person in need is a neighbor indeed. It means you help people because it's the right thing to do. Vila stared at him. That's a foolish philosophy. It will get you killed. Probably, smiled. But I'd rather die being foolish than live being cruel. Before Vila could respond, his communicator beeped. He grabbed it quickly. Please tell me you have good news. The holographic image of another Korean man appeared, looked excited. He was younger than with glasses and messy hair. I've been analyzing the data you sent. This is amazing. Your blood work shows antibodies that are actually fighting the void rot. What, are you serious? Completely serious. Humans produce an enzyme that seems to slow the disease down. It's not a cure, but it's something. I need more time to develop a proper treatment, but this proves humans can resist void rot better than other species. Felt hope surge through him. How long do you need? At least 2 weeks. And I'll need rare compounds, things you can't get on Meridian 7. There's a research outpost on 9, an ice moon on the galactic rim. My old professor runs it. He has the equipment and materials we need. 9 is 3 days from here, said, thinking fast. We can make it. His expression turned serious. You need to know something. Left the Galactic Council because they tried to stop his research. He's controversial, and 9 is outside council protection. You'll be on your own out there. We're already on our own, said. Send me the coordinates. After the call ended, Vila spoke from the bed. You would take me into lawless space. For what? I'm dying anyway. Turned to her. You're not dead yet, and as long as you're alive, there's hope. Hope, she repeated the word like it was foreign. My people abandoned me. The council wants me dead. What hope is there? The hope that tomorrow will be better than today, said simply. It's all any of us really have. Before Vila could argue, an urgent message came through on the station's emergency channel. His face went pale as he listened. What is it? Vila asked. Ships have arrived. Your empire sent agents to ensure you die with honor. And there are bounty hunters too. Someone put a price on your head. Of course they did. Vila closed her eyes. I found evidence of corruption in the military. High-ranking generals selling bioweapons to hostile species. They infected me to silence me. Now they need to make sure I never talk. His jaw tightened. You discovered that and they did this to you. Truth is dangerous to powerful people, Vila said bitterly. This is how they deal with danger. A knock on the ship's airlock made them both freeze. Checked the security monitor. Commander stood outside alone. He opened the door carefully. Stepped inside quickly. You need to leave. Now. The council has authorized bounty hunters to board your ship in 3 hours. 3 hours? That's barely enough time to prepare for launch. I know, that's why I'm here. Handed him a data chip. These are safe routes through the outer systems, and this. She gave him a credit chip. It's not much, but it'll buy you fuel and supplies. Stared at her. Why are you helping us? Because what they're doing is wrong. Because you did something brave and stupid, and I respect that. Because, she paused, because someone should stand up for what's right, even if it costs them everything. Thank you, said quietly. Don't thank me, just go. And be careful, you're not just running from bounty hunters. You're defying the Empire, they won't stop. After left, began preparing the ship for departure. Vila watched him work, her expression thoughtful. You're really going to do this, she said. Run away with a dying alien princess, become a fugitive. I'm really going to do this, confirmed, checking the fuel levels. Why, you could hand me over right now, collect the bounty, live comfortably. Stopped what he was doing and looked at her directly. My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She was poor, worked 3 jobs just to feed us, but she never turned away someone who needed help. One winter, she let a homeless family stay in our apartment for 2 months, even though we barely had enough space for ourselves. He smiled at the memory. I asked her why she did it. She told me, money comes and goes, comfort is temporary, but kindness echoes forever. It changes the world in ways you can't see. I didn't really understand it then, but I do now. Vila felt something strange in her chest. Respect, admiration. She had met thousands of beings in her life, politicians, warriors, scholars, but she had never met anyone quite like this human. Your grandmother sounds wise, she said softly. She was the person I ever knew, replied. She died last year, but before she did, she made me promise to always help people when I could, even if it's hard, even if it costs me. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you went back to his preparations. Now rest, we have a long journey ahead. 2 hours later, the engines roared to life. Sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls. On the medical bed behind him, Vila was strapped in safely. Station control is demanding we halt, said, reading the incoming messages. They're threatening to disable our engines. Can you outrun them? Vila asked. Grinned, I used to race cargo ships through asteroid fields for fun. Hold on. The shot out of the docking bay like a bullet. Station security ships tried to intercept them, but weaved through the traffic lanes with incredible skill. He dove under a massive freighter, shot through the gap between two trading vessels, and accelerated toward open space. Alarms blared in the cockpit. We've got 3 ships on our tail, announced. Bounty hunters. They're fast, Vila observed, watching the monitors. Despite her weakness, her tactical mind was still sharp. You can't outrun them in a cargo ship. Watch me. Flew toward the nearby asteroid field. The bounty hunters followed, firing warning shots. Pushed into the field, navigating between spinning rocks the size of buildings. The bounty hunters tried to follow, but they weren't used to this kind of flying. One ship clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. Another had to pull back to avoid a collision. The third ship was more skilled. It stayed on their tail, matching every move. A blast hit their starboard side, making the ship shake. Shields at 60%, Vila called out, reading the instruments. Another hit like that and we're in trouble. Saw a narrow gap between 2 massive asteroids ahead. It was barely wide enough for the... Trust me, he said, and flew straight for it. The gap was so narrow that the ship's shield scraped against the rocks on both sides, sending sparks flying. But they made it through. The bounty hunter ship tried to follow but was too large. It had to pull up at the last second, losing sight of them. Guided the ship out of the asteroid field and engaged the faster-than-light drive. Stars stretched into lines as they jumped into deep space. In the sudden quiet, let out a long breath. We made it. Vila looked at him with new respect. That was impressive for a primitive species. Laughed, I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one, Vila admitted. Then softer, thank you for everything. We're not safe yet, reminded her, but we're alive, that's what matters. As the flew through the darkness toward 9, Vila found herself thinking about the human's words. Kindness echoes forever. Maybe there was something to that philosophy after all. Maybe this primitive species understood something that her ancient empire had forgotten. Outside the window, the stars glittered like distant hopes. The journey to 9 took 3 days. 3 days alone in deep space, far from any trade routes or civilized systems. Spent most of that time in the cockpit, monitoring their path and watching for pursuers. Vila spent it recovering, growing stronger each day as blood treatment slowed the void rot's advance. On the second day, Vila was strong enough to leave the medical bay. She walked into the cockpit slowly, still weak but determined. Looked up from his controls, surprised. You should be resting, he said. I've been resting for 2 days. I needed to move. She sat in the co-pilot's chair, looking out at the stars. I've never seen this part of space before. It's empty. That's why outlaws like it, said. No patrols, no rules, just survival. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Vila spoke again. "Tell me about Earth, about your people." Seemed surprised by the question. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I realized something. I've lived for 97 of your Earth years. I've visited hundreds of worlds, met thousands of beings, but I never actually talked to a human before. Not really. We were beneath my notice." She said it with shame in her voice. "I was wrong." Thought about where to begin. Earth is complicated. We're a young species, like everyone keeps reminding us. We've only had space travel for 50 years. Before that, we spent most of our history fighting each other. "That's true of most species," Vila said. "Maybe, but humans took it to extremes. We had wars that killed millions. We invented weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We came very close to wiping ourselves out several times. Yet you survived." "We did, and we learned, the hard way." Pulled up an image on the screen, Earth, blue and green and beautiful. "We learned that we're stronger together than apart, that our differences make us better, not weaker. That compassion isn't weakness, it's the hardest strength there is." Vila studied the image. "It's a pretty planet." "It is, and it's still got problems, poverty, inequality. We're far from perfect, but we're trying," he smiled. "That's what humans do. We keep trying even when it seems hopeless." "Is that why you helped me? Because humans don't give up?" "I helped you because it was right," said simply. "Everything else is just details." That night, or what passed for night on a ship without natural light, Vila couldn't sleep. She found in the small kitchen area, making something that smelled strange but not unpleasant. "What is that?" she asked. "Instant noodles. Want some?" "I don't know if biology can process human food." "Only one way to find out." They sat together, eating noodles. Vila was cautious at first but found the spicy broth surprisingly good. Told her stories about Earth, about cities that touched the sky, about oceans deeper than space felt, about music and art and all the small, beautiful things that made life worth living. In turn, Vila talked about her empire, about the beauty of cities that glowed with bioluminescent light, about the ancient traditions and the proud history, but also about the corruption she had discovered, the darkness hiding behind the beauty. "I thought I could change things from within," she said quietly. "I was naive. The generals who sold those bioweapons have too much power. When I found proof of their crimes, they didn't arrest me or exile me. They gave me a disease and let fear do the rest." "But you have the proof, right?" asked. "The evidence." Vila touched a pendant around her neck. It was a small crystal that glowed faintly. "Everything is in here. Transaction records, communication logs, names and dates. Proof that high-ranking officials sold bioweapons to 3 different hostile species. Then we can expose them, make people see the truth." "Who would believe a diseased princess over decorated generals? I'm already declared dead by my own people. My word means nothing now." "Your word means something to me," said firmly. "And if we can cure you, if we can show that humans saved you when your own empire abandoned you, that will mean something to everyone. It'll prove that compassion works, that kindness matters." Vila looked at him with something like wonder. "You really believe that, don't you? That one person can make a difference?" "My grandmother used to say that every great change in history started with one person who refused to accept the way things were." Finished his noodles. "Maybe that person is you, or me, or both of us together." On the third day, 9 came into view. It was a small moon covered in ice, orbiting a dead planet. On the surface, barely visible against the white landscape, was a cluster of buildings, research outpost. As they approached, sent the identification codes had given him. For a long moment there was no response. Then a gruff voice came through the speakers. "This is 9 Research Station. Identify yourself." "My name is sent me. I have Princess Vila of the Empire on board. She has void rot. We need your help." Another long pause. Then you brought Void Rot to my station. Are you insane? Probably, but we're running out of options. Said you might be able to help develop a cure. Always was too optimistic. But despite his words, the man sounded curious. Fine, land in Bay 3, but if you try anything suspicious, my automated defenses will blow your ship into atoms. They landed on the icy surface. The landing bay doors opened, revealing a sparse but functional facility. A man waited for them, though he hadn't given his name yet. He was older than maybe in his 50s, with gray streaks in his black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Helped Vila out of the ship. She was wearing a cloak to hide her flickering skin, but Scanner picked up her condition immediately. Void Rot, he confirmed, studying his readings. Advanced stage, you should be dead already. It's been giving me blood transfusions, Vila explained. Human antibodies slow the disease. His eyebrows shot up. You've been transfusing her with your own blood, without knowing if it would work. He paused. Actually, that's brilliant and incredibly reckless. I've been called worse, said. Led them through the facility. It was larger than it looked from outside, filled with advanced medical equipment and research stations. I left the Galactic Council 10 years ago, he explained. They wanted to suppress my cross-species medical research, said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable, but out here, nobody tells me what I can or can't study. He brought them to a medical lab and started running tests on both and Vila. Hours passed as he worked, occasionally muttering to himself in Korean. Finally, he looked up. This is fascinating. Human immune systems produce an enzyme called resilience factor alpha. Most species don't have it. It's why humans can survive in so many different environments, and it's exactly what we need to fight Void Rot. Can you make a cure? Vila asked. Not a cure, but a treatment that could save your life. I'll need about a week to synthesize the compounds, and, he looked at, I'll need more of your blood, a lot more. Take what you need, said without hesitation. Over the next several days, they fell into a routine, worked around the clock in his lab, underwent regular blood draws, which left him weak and tired. Vila grew stronger each day as the experimental treatments began to work. During rest periods and Vila talked, she told him about philosophy, about their art and literature. He taught her Korean words and phrases, laughing when she mispronounced them. They played simple games with cards had in his ship. They shared meals. One evening, Vila found sitting alone in the observation room, looking out at the ice fields of Nine. She sat beside him. You look tired, she said. I am tired, but it's worth it. Is it? You've sacrificed so much. Your safety, your blood, your whole life. Turned to her. You want to know something? Before this, I was just drifting, working my job, paying my bills, going through the motions. I wasn't really living, but now I'm part of something important. I'm helping save a life. I'm fighting against injustice. That's worth being tired for. Vila reached out and took his hand. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact. When this is over, if we survive, I will spend the rest of my life repaying this debt. It's not a debt, said gently. It's a gift. Gifts don't need to be repaid. Then I will spend my life making sure your gift wasn't wasted. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars above the ice. For the first time since her ordeal began, Vila felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. But their peace was about to be shattered. On the 7th day, alarms went off. Ships were approaching Nine. Not just any ships, a full bounty hunter assault team. They had been found. Pulled up the security monitors. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She was Korean-like, but her eyes were cold and calculating. This is, the woman announced. I'm here for Princess Vila and the bounty on her head. Surrender her peacefully and I'll let the rest of you live. Refuse, and my team will take this facility apart piece by piece. Looked at, can your defenses hold them off? For a while, but they have heavy weapons. Eventually they'll break through. Vila stood up, her eyes determined. I won't let you die for me. I'll surrender. Like hell you will, said. He turned to, how long until the treatment is ready? 12 hours, maybe less. Then we hold them off for 12 hours. Checked his pistol, a simple weapon, nothing military grade. We've come too far to give up now. Outside, ships landed on the ice. The battle for 9 was about to begin. The first explosion shook the entire facility. Steam had begun their assault with heavy plasma charges against the outer walls. Automated defense systems fired back, creating a deadly light show across the ice fields of 9. Inside the facility, worked frantically in his lab while Envila prepared to defend it. Had only his small pistol, but had a few defense weapons stored away. He gave Vila an energy rifle. I thought you were a scientist, not a soldier, said as pulled out another rifle for himself. Out here you need to be both, replied grimly. The galaxy isn't kind to people who can't defend themselves. Vila checked her rifle with practiced ease. Despite her weakened state, she moved like a trained warrior. How many are out there? Sensors show 12 hostiles, said, reading his monitors. Heavily armed, professional mercenaries. And we're 3 people, one of whom is half dead, one who's a mechanic and one who's a scientist, summarized. Great odds. I've faced worse, Vila said with a grim smile. Once you accept that death is coming, fighting becomes easier. Nobody's dying today, said firmly. How long do you need? 10 hours minimum. The synthesis process can't be rushed. Then we give you 10 hours. Another explosion closer this time. The lights flickered. Voice came through the facility's communication system. Last chance. Send out the princess or we come in shooting. Activated the facility's response system. This is a scientific research station. You're violating galactic law by attacking us. Laughed. We're beyond galactic law out here, old man. You have 5 minutes to comply. Vila and took positions near the main entrance. The facility had multiple sections with sealed doors that could slow down attackers. It wasn't much, but it was something. 5 minutes passed, then the real assault began. Mercenaries in heavy armor broke through the outer door with a shaped charge. Automated turrets opened fire, cutting down 2 of them immediately. The others scattered, taking cover and returning fire. They're good, Vila observed, watching through the security cameras. Military training, this won't be easy. The mercenaries advanced methodically, using suppression fire to disable the turrets one by one. Fired his pistol through a gap in the barricade, forcing them to stay behind cover. He wasn't a trained soldier, but his hands were steady. Section 1 is compromised, announced. Sealing it off, they'll have to cut through the blast door. They fell back to Section 2. Through the cameras, they could see the mercenaries setting up a plasma cutter on the blast door. It would take them about 30 minutes to break through. Why are they doing this? Asked as they waited. Is the bounty really worth all this effort? It's not just the bounty, Vila said quietly. My empire wants me dead. They probably hired these people directly. They need to make sure I never speak about what I discovered. Then we make sure you live long enough to shout it from every rooftop in the galaxy, said. The blast door exploded inward. The mercenaries poured through, firing as they came, and Vila returned fire from behind cover. One mercenary went down, then another, but there were too many. Fall back, shouted, to Section 3. They retreated, sealing another blast door behind them, but they were running out of sections to fall back to. The lab where was synthesizing the treatment was in Section 5, only 2 more sections away. Hours passed in a blur of gunfire and explosions. His arm was grazed by a plasma bolt, leaving a burning wound. Vila took a hit to her shoulder but kept fighting, her warrior training taking over despite her illness. His face was covered in soot and sweat. How much longer? Shouted over the noise of battle. 4 hours, replied. The process is at 60%. They were in Section 4 now. One more section between them and the lab. The mercenaries had breached the previous blast door and were setting up for another assault. During a brief lull in the fighting's voice came through again. "You're fighting well, I respect that, but you can't win. My sensors show there are only 3 of you. You're wounded and tired. Give up now and I'll make it quick." Grab the communicator. "We're not giving up, we're human, we don't know how." "Human?" His voice held surprise. "You're human? Then you're even more foolish than I thought. Why would a human die for an alien princess?" "Because she's not just a princess. She's a person, and people are worth saving." There was a long pause, then spoke again, and her voice was different, thoughtful. "I was human once too, you know, before I became this. Before I learned that credits matter more than principles. You remind me of who I used to be." "Then help us," said. "It's not too late to be that person again." "Yes, it is," said, and her voice was sad. "I made my choice a long time ago, just like you've made yours. I'll see you on the other side." The assault resumed with renewed fury. The mercenaries threw everything they had at Section 4. Vila and fought desperately, but they were being pushed back. "We can't hold them much longer," shouted. Vila looked at the 2 men who had risked everything for her. Blood ran down her arm from her wound. Her skin flickered weakly, but her eyes were determined. "Then we don't hold them, we go to them." "What?" Looked at her. "That's suicide." "Maybe, but if we die defending, they win anyway. If we attack, we might surprise them." She stood up, gripping her rifle. "I am Vila, daughter of the Empire. I will not die hiding behind a door." Before could stop her, she charged through the door into the corridor. Her rifle blazed with energy as she fired at the mercenaries. They scattered in surprise, not expecting such an aggressive move from people who had been retreating for hours. Cursed and followed her. He fired his pistol, giving her cover. To his surprise came 2, shooting with careful precision. The sudden counterattack caught the mercenaries off guard. 2 more went down. The rest fell back, regrouping. But in that moment of chaos, herself stepped into the corridor. She was wearing combat armor and carrying a heavy rifle. She looked at, and for a moment, something passed between them, recognition of 2 people who had made very different choices. "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it. She raised her rifle, knew he couldn't dodge in time. He closed his eyes, waiting for the shot. It never came. Had thrown himself in front of. The plasma bolt hit him in the chest and he fell backward, caught him, lowering him gently to the floor. "No, no, no," said, pressing his hands against the wound. "Stay with me." The older man's eyes were already fatting. "The treatment, automated, finish in 2 hours. We'll get you help, just hold on." "No time," coughed, Tell's proud of him. "Continue the work." "Please," begged. Smiled weakly. "You showed me. Humans have courage, thank you." His eyes closed, his breathing stopped. Rage-filled, he stood up, tears streaming down his face, and fired at. She dove for cover. Vila joined him, and together they unleashed everything they had. The remaining mercenaries, seeing their employer under heavy fire and their numbers cut in half, made a decision. They retreated, screamed at them to stand and fight, but they were done. This wasn't worth dying for. Found herself alone, facing 2 determined opponents. She looked at one more time. "You won," she said quietly. "I hope it was worth it." She activated a smoke grenade and disappeared into the haze. By the time it cleared, she was gone, retreating to her ship. And Vila stood in the corridor, breathing hard, covered in wounds and exhaustion. Around them lay the signs of battle, scorched walls, damaged equipment, fallen enemies. But they had won. They carried his body to the medical bay with reverence. Wanted to stay with him, to mourn properly, but Vila pulled him away. "The treatment," she said gently. "We can't let his sacrifice be wasted." They went to the lab. The synthesizer was still working just as had said. The progress bar showed 98%. They sat together and waited, neither speaking, both lost in their thoughts. 2 hours later, the machine beeped. The treatment was ready. Vila looked at the vial of clear liquid. It seemed so small, so simple. Yet it represented everything: compassion's genius, dedication. And it had cost so much. "Are you sure it will work?" she asked. "Was sure, that's enough for me." Administered the treatment himself, his hands shaking slightly. Then they waited again. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, gradually, the dark veins on Vila's skin began to fade. Her natural blue glow grew stronger and steadier. The void rot was dying. After an hour, Vila stood up. For the first time in weeks, she felt strong. The disease that had been killing her was gone. She was cured. She looked at who was slumped in a chair, exhausted beyond measure. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," he agreed. "Now we honor by making sure this meant something." Vila touched her pendant, where all the evidence of her empire's corruption remained safe. "Then let's go back to civilization. Let's show them what happened here. Let's make sure everyone knows what humans are capable of." Compassion asked. "Heroism," Vila corrected. "True heroism." They prepared for departure, leaving 9 behind. Before they left, they buried in the ice, marking his grave with honor. He had died saving them. They would not forget. The journey back to Meridian 7 took 4 days. 4 days to recover from his wounds and exhaustion. 4 days for Vila to grow stronger, her body finally free from the void rot. 4 days to plan what they would do when they arrived. "They'll arrest us the moment we dock," said, studying the navigation charts. "I'm technically a fugitive now." "Let them try," Vila replied. She was wearing her royal garments again, which she had kept in her escape pod. The blue fabric shimmered and her skin glowed with healthy light. She looked every bit the princess she was born to be. "I am the heir to the throne. They cannot simply arrest me. Your empire declared you dead. They might not recognize your authority anymore. Then I will remind them who I am." While they traveled, something interesting began happening across the galaxy. Commander had been busy. She had leaked information about what happened on 9 to several independent journalists. The story of a human mechanic who risked everything to save an alien princess was spreading like wildfire through the communication networks. Some species praised actions, others mocked them as foolish, but everyone was talking about it. Humanity, young, weak, often dismissed humanity, had done something remarkable. On Earth, the story became even bigger. Humans were proud that one of their own had shown such courage. Protests erupted outside diplomatic offices, demanding justice for Vila and honor for sacrifice. The Korean government officially requested that be pardoned for any crimes. By the time they approached Meridian 7, everything had changed. A fleet of ships waited at the station. Not just station security, but vessels from dozens of different species. News crews had their cameras ready. Diplomatic shuttles hovered nearby. The whole galaxy, it seemed, wanted to see what would happen next. His hands were sweating as he guided the ship toward the docking bay. "This is it. No turning back now. We passed the point of no return when you first decided to help me," Vila said. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "Whatever happens, I want you to know something. You saved more than my life. You saved my faith in goodness. You showed me that honor and compassion still exist in this galaxy." "I just did what felt right," said. "Exactly. That's what makes it so extraordinary." The ship docked. The airlock opened. Outside, hundreds of beings waited: security forces, diplomats, journalists, and curious onlookers. At the front stood Commander, flanked by someone unexpected: Ambassador, Earth's chief representative to the Galactic Council. Was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She smiled when she saw. "Welcome back. You've caused quite a stir." "I didn't mean to," said. "The best heroes never do," turned to Vila and bowed slightly. "Princess Vila, On behalf of Earth and humanity, I formally invoke the right of sanctuary. You are under human protection. Any attack on you is an attack on all of humanity." A murmur ran through the crowd. The right of sanctuary was an ancient law rarely used. For humanity to invoke it was bold, some would say reckless. Earth was not a powerful species militarily. They had no right to challenge ancient empires. But that's exactly what they were doing. Ambassador, the reptilian diplomat who had wanted to throw Vila into space, stepped forward. His scales gleamed in the station lights. "This is highly irregular. The Empire has declared Princess Vila dead. Her status—" "I am very much alive," Vila interrupted, her voice ringing clear and strong. "And I demand to speak before the Galactic Council. I have evidence of crimes committed by high-ranking officials in my empire. Crimes that threaten the security of every species in this galaxy." "Preposterous," said. "You are diseased, your mind affected." "I was diseased," Vila corrected. "Thanks to human medicine and human courage, I am cured. My mind is clear, and my evidence is irrefutable." She held up the crystal pendant. "Everything is recorded here, every transaction, every communication, every name." The journalists' cameras focused on the pendant. The story was getting bigger by the second. "Looked uncomfortable. The council will need time to review." "The council will hear Princess Vila today," interrupted firmly. "Or Earth will present her evidence to every independent news network in the galaxy. The choice is yours." It wasn't really a choice. Within an hour, an emergency council session was convened. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in circular tiers for representatives from hundreds of species. Had never been inside before. He felt small and out of place among all these important beings. But when Vila took his hand and led him to the center of the chamber, he stood tall. Ambassador called the session to order. "Princess Vila of the Empire has requested to speak. However, given the unusual circumstances, we must first verify." "There is nothing to verify," Vila said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "I am who I say I am, and I am here to expose a conspiracy that has endangered every species under council protection." She activated the pendant. Holographic displays filled the air around her, showing transaction records, communication logs, and detailed evidence of bioweapon sales. She named names, generals, ministers, even members of her own family who had been involved. The evidence was damning. As she spoke, the chamber grew silent, even seemed shocked by the scale of the corruption. "These weapons were sold to hostile species," Vila continued. "Species who have used them against innocent populations. When I discovered this conspiracy, the officials responsible infected me with void rot, a disease they engineered, hoping I would die quietly. My own empire, the people I was born to lead, tried to murder me." "These are serious accusations," another council member said. "But how do we know this evidence is genuine?" "Because I vouch for it," said a new voice. A holographic projection appeared, speaking from Earth. "I am Doctor, human medical researcher. I analyzed the data Princess Vila provided. The bioweapon signatures match known attacks on 3 different colony worlds. The evidence is real." Another hologram appeared, a witness from one of the affected colonies, testifying about the bioweapon attack they had survived. Then another witness, and another. Species that had been afraid to speak out before now found their courage. The tide was turning. The representatives tried to defend themselves, but their arguments fell apart under the weight of evidence. Other species, particularly smaller ones who had suffered under influence, began speaking out. The chamber erupted in discussion and debate. Finally, Ambassador stood. "The evidence speaks for itself, but I want to address something else, something more important than any political scandal." The chamber quieted. A few weeks ago, Princess Vila was abandoned by her own people. She was left to die because they feared her disease more than they valued her life. The Galactic Council, this esteemed body, was prepared to throw her into space to save themselves the trouble of dealing with her. Let those words sink in. But one human, a simple mechanic named, made a different choice. He risked his life. He gave his blood. He became a fugitive. And because of his choice, Princess Vila lives. Because of his choice, this corruption has been exposed. Because of his choice, justice may finally be served. She looked around the chamber. Humanity is young. We're not as advanced as most of you. We don't have powerful weapons or vast empires, but we have something else. We have compassion. We have the courage to do what's right even when it's hard, even when it costs us everything. That's what I see when I look at, continued. I see what humanity can be at its best, and I challenge every species in this chamber to ask themselves, when was the last time you chose compassion over convenience? When was the last time you risked something for a stranger? The silence in the chamber was profound. Over the next several days, the Galactic Council took action. The Empire was sanctioned. The corrupt officials were arrested. The bioweapon program was shut down. Species that had been silent about their grievances now spoke freely, and reforms began spreading through the galaxy. But something more important was happening too. The story of and Vila had touched something deep in the galactic consciousness. Acts of kindness began occurring more frequently. Species started helping each other more. The cynicism that had ruled galactic politics for so long began to crack. Vila was offered the throne of the Empire. Her younger siblings had proven weak leaders, and the people wanted someone strong, but she turned it down. "I don't want to rule," she told as they stood together in an observation deck, watching ships come and go from Meridian 7. "I want to do something more important." What could be more important than ruling an empire? Changing minds, building bridges, showing species how to help each other, she smiled. "I want to create a foundation, an organization dedicated to cross-species medical research and compassionate diplomacy. I want to honor his memory by continuing his work." "That's a good dream," said. "Will you help me? I can't do it alone." Thought about his old life, fixing cargo ships, going through the motions, feeling like he wasn't making a difference. Then he thought about everything that had happened, the choices he had made, the lives he had touched. "Yes," he said, "I'll help you." The foundation was established 6 months later. Species from across the galaxy contributed resources, knowledge, and support. The foundation focused on helping those who had been abandoned by their own societies, the sick, the poor, the forgotten. On the day of the foundation's official opening, representatives from hundreds of species attended. The ceremony was held on Meridian 7, in the same docking bay where Vila's escape pod had first crashed. Gave a speech. He was nervous. He had never been comfortable with public speaking. But as he looked out at the crowd, he thought of his grandmother. He thought of every person who had ever chosen kindness over fear. "My grandmother used to tell me that kindness echoes forever," he said. "I didn't really understand what she meant, but now I do. When you help someone, you're not just changing their life. You're showing them that compassion exists, that people care, and that example spreads." He looked at Vila, who stood beside him in her royal garments. "Princess Vila and I come from very different worlds, different species, different cultures, but we learned something together. We learned that our differences don't divide us, they enrich us. Every species has something to teach. Every person has value." "Humans are young," continued. "We're flawed. We make mistakes, but we also know something important. We know that strength isn't just about power or weapons or empires. Real strength is standing up when it's hard. Real strength is choosing compassion when fear tells you to walk away. Real strength is helping someone even when there's nothing in it for you." He gestured to the foundation building behind him. "This place exists because people made hard choices, because they risked things, because they believed that one person can make a difference. And I'm here to tell you they were right. One person can change the world. One act of kindness can echo forever. The crowd erupted in applause, not just from humans but from dozens of species. The sound filled the docking bay, filled the station, filled the space beyond. Later that day, as the celebrations continued, and Vila found a quiet moment alone, they stood in the observation room of the which was now permanently docked at the station, serving as the Foundation's flagship. "Do you ever regret it?" Vila asked, "giving up your normal life to help me?" Looked at her and smiled. "Not even for a second. Before I met you I was just existing, going through the motions. Now I'm living. Now I'm part of something that matters." "We're part of something that matters," Vila corrected. "Partners." "Partners," agreed. They looked out at the stars together. Ships from across the galaxy were arriving at the Foundation, seeking help, offering knowledge, building bridges. The galaxy was changing, slowly but surely, one act of compassion at a time. Somewhere out there on Earth, in a small cemetery, there was a grave with flowers on it. His grandmother's grave. If she could see him now, she would be proud. Her lessons about kindness, about helping those in need, had echoed across the stars and changed the galaxy. And in another grave, on the frozen surface of Nine, rested. His sacrifice had not been in vain. His dream of cross-species cooperation was becoming reality. In a galaxy that had forgotten how to care, one human's simple choice had become a revolution. And that revolution was just beginning. Squeezed Vila's hand gently, ready for the next mission. "With you always." The engines hummed to life. They had requests from 3 different colonies for medical assistance, people who needed help, people who had been abandoned or forgotten, people who would learn, just as Vila had learned, that compassion still existed in the galaxy. That kindness echoed forever. That one person making one choice could change everything. As the ship undocked and flew toward the stars, thought about his grandmother's words one more time. She had been right all along. Kindness does echo forever, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure that echo never faded. Behind them, the Foundation stood as a monument to what could happen when people chose compassion over fear, when they chose to help instead of turning away, when they remembered that every life has value, regardless of species or status. The galaxy would never be quite the same. And it was all because one human mechanic had looked at a dying princess and said the simplest, most powerful words in any language. "I will help you."